original handwritten music manuscripts that were collected in two places. One is from the Anski expeditions between 1912 and 1914 to the Russian Pale of Settlement. A bunch of Russian Jewish proto-ethnomusicologists, intellectuals from the big city went out into the country to the small shtetl, and they collected poems and songs and folklore and music. And all of this music and all of this material was taken back to St. Petersburg and to Kiev, and there it is mostly stayed behind the walls of an archive, right? And you know, these old-fashioned archives being what they are, it has been very challenging to get material out of these places. Certainly before 1990, for a Westerner, it was almost impossible to get access to this kind of material. So for us now to have, we have 850 photographs of these original music manuscripts, and within them we have approximately 1,400 melodies. So it's sort of, we've calculated that when we released this material to the public in November of 2020, we increased the sheer number of easily accessible klezmer music by 5 times, a factor of 5. This
compared to what we had before.
Right, music that was easy to access of a European klezmer orientation. And so this project is built on giving anybody who's interested access to the music that they can read in its original manuscript form. And then for us as a community of musicians and scholars and translators and linguists to work together to digitally notate the music, just to make it so that you can put it up on the bandstand, play the music, and then to translate and transliterate all of the text that comes along with, written in the margins, scribbled at the ends. We have titles and we have notes. We have little bits of marginalia, that tell us little tantalizing bits of information about these tunes. So it's this great wealth, and we're all working on it together. But it's a little bit like only feeling the tail, the left back leg of the elephant. You know that metaphor.
Yeah.
We only see what we can see, right? We only have this. What we have is 850 photographs, and we have a catalog, and that's it. We don't have any of the extra notes. We don't have field notes. We don't have anything else, only this. And so for us also as a community, it's an act of creativity to try to understand and interpret what we're finding. And that's kind of what we're all doing here. And that's the impetus behind, this traditional approach for band and the new music approach. So
It's very interesting mentioning the elephant leg. I never thought of this before, but you know that some years ago, an entire new human species was discovered because in a cave in Siberia, they found this much of a finger bone from a young girl. Somebody noticed this little piece of bone, and scientists looked at it and they looked into it and they said, oh, there's a new human species that we didn't know about before. It's called Denisov, because it comes from this. So actually what it means is that if you understand how to look, you can see inside of a tiny fragment an entire world that comes together in that fragment. Now what's interesting is that who are the people who are most able to look at these fragments and recognize the world that's in there? If you're an archaeologist, you have to have pretty good training to be able to look at that bone. I would probably think that it's somebody's fingernail. I wouldn't recognize what it is. And actually, there could be some very, very good scientists who would look at that and not know what it is. And there can be very many good musicologists who would look at these notes that we've got and they would say, I don't know what it is, but there's just not enough information there for me to deal with. But if you've been playing klezmer music for 30 or 40 years, and you see one of these pieces, a world opens up. And so actually, the people to do the filling in of the world, that's us. And that's why it's so important that this music is not only put online as a scholarly project, but it gets into the hands and the hearts and the minds of people who know what this music is. So that, you know, in the online discussions, and this has been happening here a lot too, we hear a melody, da-dum, ba-dum, and there are people who can say, I can tell you 10 different pieces begin with those 4 notes. So it's like looking at this little finger bone and saying, I know 10 other skeletons that have a finger bone that's just like that. And now let's see which one just accidentally look that way. And now let's see which ones it's a meaningful connection. And that's what we're doing here, as well as bringing this music back to life. And I can just say that when I heard about this project about, I guess, a year ago, or maybe even a little bit less than that, then, you know, it was like, well, that is going to be the subject of the next Yiddish Summer Weimar. Come hell or high water, as we say in English, you know, whatever it takes. But of course, Christina could have said no. I'm very, very glad that she said yes. And here we are doing this. So thank you for that very, very much. So now I want to ask you as a group, so you came together, you have this stuff. By the way, does anyone have their book with them, the YSW core repertoire book? The blue one, does anyone have that blue book? Hang on one second, because I think it would be nice to just show people one page and show them what that looks like. So you know what we're talking about. Is that right now? Oh, you can pass it along. By the way, for Christine and I talked about this, and we came to the conclusion that we wanted to have a small selection of this material for this year's Yiddish Summer Weimar as a core repertoire, so that all of the workshops have a chance to look into the same material, and we make it kind of a community among ourselves. You know, a language only exists when the community speaks it, and the same thing is true of music repertoire. A community has to take on a repertoire and say, yes, this is our repertoire, and then it becomes real as a repertoire. If the community doesn't take it on, it's just, you know, Ware that you can either take or leave. But once the community takes it on, and our idea is that after this, in Shtetl Berlin and in England and all over the world, people are going to be playing this music that they're learning this summer. So it's going to become a common language. So just to give you an idea, this is the black and white version. We have a black and white version, a color version. Again, this went through a wonderful collective process that was led by Christina and Hannah and Jutta, who is teaching violin in one of the workshops. So you always have on this side, you have a photograph. This is black and white, but there's also a color version of this. And then on this side, you have the digitization version, the digitized version that someone did. And Hannah Ochner over there, who's helping us out here today, has digitized how many?
Over 300.
Over 300 of these tunes in her free time.
Okay.
So thank you very much. Okay, so how did this group of musicians come together? Well, Christina and I were talking, and I said, Christina, we want to do a project because it's not enough for everyone just to learn this music. We want everyone to have had a chance to artistically engage with this music before the workshop begins, so that we have our own relationship to the music by the time we get to the workshop, which is going to start next week for us here. So how do we do this? So I had said to Christina, well, pick 3 or 4 musicians that you would like to work with as your team. And she suggested these people. So we kind of suggested that together, and so evolved this group. You know? And then I went through the same process and invited these 3 people. And as you'll see in our concert tomorrow night, this is the traditional band, this is the new Yiddish music band. Each one of us plays a set of 20 or 30 minutes by ourselves, and then we play together as well. And in Thuringia this year, each one of us has our own concerts and also concerts together. So now let's come to your part of this. So the first day you sit down together, you didn't really know Samuel yet, right? Some of you didn't know each other. Some of you knew each other but hadn't played very much together. And now you have the job. We've got 5 days to put together a concert program. What did you do? Tell us about that process.
I think we were just looking for the rep at that point. So we were
Rep is repertoire.
repertoire. Yes, we were looking. yeah, we were looking for the repertoire that we were going to play for our concert and figuring out what sounded good as the ensemble and what I think that we maybe had a good agreement process on like, yeah, this is the one we want to do. It was kind of quick. There wasn't like a back and forth on here's a tune, maybe we should do it, maybe we shouldn't. It was oftentimes here's a tune, yeah, let's do this. This sounds good with this group. And I think the first day is a lot of also getting to know each other, our styles of playing, how we accompany, how we play the melody, what we like. You know, Christian and I both said that we love it when the clarinet plays in the same octave, the melody. But it was nice to have that moment to say it, you know.
So I have a question about this. As I'm looking at these notes, I don't see any chords. I don't see anywhere where it says cornet or violin. All I see is a melody line. So what do when you have a melody line? How do you what do you mean you play that together? How do you do that?
Well, we're the trad band. We're the traditional band.
Okay.
So, you know, you default first time to your sort of traditional roles, you know. I play the accordion. I'll hang out in the rhythm section. Maybe Christian and I will be playing, Christian will be playing tuba, and we'll be going along. It's like something will kind of be like, okay, let's stop for a minute. This harmony, that harmony, let's try both of them, see which one we like.
And how about the violin? Does the violin play only melody all the time?
No, violin has two different roles in the ensemble. We have the melody role, of course, most important instrument traditionally in jazz music, and the other one is the second or bratsche player. This is the part of the rhythm section. So you support the harmonies, give energy into the rhythm thing, and the question we decided twice as the second question was, how would we like to perform the piece after making the decision that we will do this one? So we asked us which kind of grooves we already know would fit to the thing. So we tried out some of them and decided which kind of tempo, which kind of attitude should this piece have from our experiences and from the music we just looked at.
Okay, now you have two violins in your band, right? And one is lead and the other is accompaniment. Did you fight over who gets to be the lead and who gets to be the
Endless.
How did you decide? How did you decide?
Both prima donnas.
How did you decide who gets to do what?
How did we decide?
Well, let me ask you this. Are you in one piece? Are you always either the lead or the accompaniment, or does that switch around?
It switches.
That switches around.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not like you have to choose either being the lead or the accompaniment. There's enough to go around for everybody.
Yeah.
That helps it make it easier to decide.
Sometimes we also both play the same.
Ah, okay.
So everything's possible. Just mix it.
Yeah, sometimes we leave that open also, right?
Yes.
We don't make a
Yes.
decision, we don't structure it clearly, but there's also room for things to happen that, you know, we both play the melody and we both play it in the same octave or not, or that's nice.
So
It's also
Christian,
part of the process.
you're one of the greatest living klezmer clarinet players. I can just say that out loud. It's a fact.
Yep. Yeah, they're like 1,300 of them.
So,
That means a lot.
I think there's no more than at the most a dozen that I would put in that category. Another one of them is here. Another one, two of the greatest in the world are with us here. But you're playing tuba, for God's sake.
Yeah.
What would make a clarinet player, a great clarinet player, want to go boom, boom, boom instead?
Well, it's
You know, having the tuba, it's just it creates this
It
different
depends.
world.
It depends a bit
Yeah.
on the genre. You know,
Yeah.
what we feel is this is a piece that sounds a little bit more orchestral. You know, can have a bigger range, you know, a bigger sound, or does it just simply need some.
Okay. Now, the
So, but I don't
accordion-
always do that. We also like, there are also pieces where I play clarinet, and some
Right.
people like play all four, play melody,
Right.
you don't harmonize much. And,
So
just
you,
like
you
have
had,
that
you must have had
interbeat.
like similar intuitions about your artistic roles. Like, did you ever find yourself saying, I really want to do it this way, and another person said, I'll quit if we do it that way, or anything like that at all?
Not that extreme.
No, okay. What happened? What were just, how do you handle disagreements about artistic choices?
Yeah, not
We
so much
take a coffee
time.
break.
Coffee
Yeah.
break.
I mean,
And then the
it's-
one who's last, you decide when that person's out of the room.
Exactly. Don't go ahead.
If you have not so much time, you should be pragmatic with that. So
Uh-huh.
sometimes we just like Christina suggested, because she was boss of the project and I'll go.
I have to say, I mean, I think my title, band director, I would much prefer to feel like our process was actually quite egalitarian and democratic. I
So
mean,
you're the chairperson.
I think, yes, convener more so than, I mean, I was, and I was never, there was never, I don't think, any moment when we were like, oh, we're gonna do this or my way. or
You
the
never got
highway.
angry.
No, I mean, it was sort of like, well, okay, you get to have the nice walk down to the sea. We're gonna just do this in a bunch of tunes, and then one tune, and we sort of like, how about we just stick with, not doing that same move in a different tune. So it was a little bit of sort of negotiation back and forth, but nothing.
We were trading, right?
Yeah, little-
Like,
little
I get my
transactional.
A major chord at this point, at this spot, and so you can
Oh,
have a solo.
There was
in the
one
next
point where
section.
Christina and I disagreed on the chords and we decided that we would do both.
Yes.
Ah.
Completely traditional resolution to that issue. right?
Well, it is actually an interesting issue that in, old time pleasure musicians were mostly not playing from written notes. So they would know like different versions of the same story, right? Like if we're gonna tell the story, I don't know what, Snow White or something, and we start off telling the story at the same time. Well, we're gonna have different versions happening at the same time. And we hear this on the old recordings. We hear that some people play it this way and other people play it that way. It's happening at the same time, and apparently it didn't bother them. On the contrary, they liked that sound. We're wrapping up. We're wrapping up. Okay.